My company asked me to investigate a secret relationship between two employees. I found out. It was my husband and his affair partner. My name is Emily, and until a few months ago, I thought I had everything under control. My career, my marriage, my future. I'm 34, a senior HR manager at a mid-sized tech company in Seattle. I'm the kind of person who color codes their Google Calendar and remembers everyone's birthday in the office. Structure, logic, and clarity keep me sane, or at least they used to. My husband, Jake, works in the same company. He's a systems engineer, brilliant, social, funny in a dry, nerdy kind of way. We met during a company retreat 5 years ago, bonded over a shared hatred for icebreakers, and started dating not long after. We got married 2 years later. At work, people joked that we were the HR-tech power couple, which made us both laugh and slightly cringe. We were careful to keep things professional. No PDA, no favoritism, separate departments, separate reporting lines. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was solid, or so I thought. We had our routines: Sunday morning coffee, midweek takeout, late-night banter about work politics. Jake was the kind of guy who remembered to scrape the ice off my windshield in the winter. He wasn't loud about his love, but I felt it in the little things. And then, things started to shift. It was subtle at first. Jake began working late more often, saying they were deploying new systems or fixing last-minute bugs. It made sense on the surface, but then came the password changes. He used to leave his phone on the kitchen counter, face up. Now it was always face down or in his pocket, even during dinner. I asked once, casually, if everything was okay. He said I was being paranoid. I let it go. A few weeks later, I walked into the office earlier than usual. I'd forgotten my laptop charger the night before, and I had an early Zoom call. As I passed one of the smaller meeting rooms, I saw Jake and a younger woman, Sophie, from customer support walking out. They weren't touching or doing anything obviously wrong, but there was a tension, like they'd been talking about something they didn't want anyone else to hear. Sophie was newish, early 20s, sweet, always smiling, the kind of bubbly that made me feel tired just watching. I'd noticed she and Jake talked sometimes during company events, but again, nothing that raised alarms. I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had a meeting to run. Still, that image lingered in my mind longer than I'd like to admit. Then, on a rainy Monday morning, I got an email flagged urgent from our legal and compliance team. As head of HR, I'm occasionally looped in on internal concerns, policy breaches, interpersonal conflicts, that kind of thing. This one was anonymous. The complaint claimed that 2 employees, names not specified, were engaging in a relationship that had begun to affect team dynamics. The whistleblower alleged that these 2 were frequently seen leaving the building together after hours, spending unusual amounts of time in closed-door meetings, and that one of them was receiving preferential treatment. The report wasn't scandalous. It was professional, calm, and specific, but vague enough not to name anyone. Normally, I'd assign this to a member of my team to investigate, but the thing is, I couldn't. Because the timeline, the building exits, the internal meetings mentioned, they lined up a little too well with Jake's schedule, and Sophie's. I remember staring at the report on my screen, my cursor hovering over the forward button. A part of me still wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding. Office gossip, someone jealous. But a louder part of me, quieter in tone, but firmer in weight, knew better. I didn't forward the report. I downloaded it, saved it, and I started reading through Jake's department calendar, meeting logs, and time cards. All public data within our internal system, nothing I wasn't allowed to see. The overlaps were impossible to ignore. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The HR professional in me knew exactly what I needed to do next. But the wife in me, she just sat there, staring at a blinking cursor and feeling something she hadn't felt in years: doubt. In HR, there's an unspoken rule: never take things personally. We're trained to listen neutrally, document everything, and respond based on facts, not feelings. I've said that sentence 100 times in trainings and policy rollouts. But when the person you might be investigating is your own husband, that line becomes blurry fast. I didn't launch a formal investigation, not right away. That would have triggered alerts, escalations, interviews. I wasn't ready for that. I told myself I just needed to verify context before assigning it to someone else. That was the lie I used to justify digging deeper myself. I started with calendar logs. Our internal system tracks room bookings, check-ins, and badge entries. Nothing secret, nothing illegal, just patterns. Jake and Sophie weren't in the same department, yet they had 4 private meeting rooms booked over the past 3 weeks. The titles were vague: project review, tech sync, client prep. Harmless, unless you knew there were no shared projects between them. More than once, their badge logs showed them leaving the building within 2 minutes of each other, often after hours. Not damning, but not nothing either. I kept going. I asked our IT compliance team to pull chat logs for routine internal audit. No one questioned it. It's not uncommon, and I had the authority. We use Slack for daily communication, and while private messages aren't usually monitored, flagged keywords occasionally get reviewed. We have a system that tags messages containing unprofessional language, potential harassment, or policy violations. 2 days later, I received a short report. Most of it was noise, memes, shorthand, off-topic banter. But then, one message was highlighted. It was from Jake to Sophie. Let's not be too obvious today. HR's been nosy. That's it. One line. One line, and yet my whole body went cold. There was no kiss emoji, no confession of love. But the context was everything. HR's been nosy. Of course they have. Because I was HR. And I was nosy. And now I knew why. I stared at that message for a long time. I wanted to believe it was nothing. A joke. Misinterpreted office banter. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Jake and Sophie weren't just close. They were hiding something. And whatever it was enough for Jake to talk about avoiding detection. At this point, I had a choice to make. As a wife, I could confront Jake at home, yell, cry, demand answers. But as a manager, a professional bound by ethics, I had to follow procedure. I needed to refer the case to someone else on my team and recuse myself officially. So I did. I scheduled a meeting with one of our senior HR associates, Sarah, someone I trusted deeply. I handed over the report, the complaint, the calendar logs, everything. I told her I had a personal conflict of interest and could no longer be involved. I didn't explain further. She didn't ask. The next few days were hollow. I went to work, I sat in meetings, I smiled when people greeted me in the hallway. But inside, everything was muted. I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside. And then came the meeting notice. Internal Conduct Review, J. Miller, S. Carter, Thursday, 2 p.m. Jake Miller, Sophie Carter. There it was, official now. The meeting was to be led by Sarah, with someone from legal present. I wasn't required to attend, but I requested permission to sit in as an observer, citing department oversight. Technically allowed. Personally, unbearable. At 1:58 p.m. that Thursday, I walked into a small glass-walled conference room. Jake was already seated, staring at his phone. Sophie came in a moment later, eyes down. Sarah began with the script. This is a standard HR inquiry, not disciplinary in nature. Yet, I watched Jake glance up and register that I was in the room. For a split second, I saw it. Panic. Shame. Then he looked away. Questions were asked. Have you and Ms. Carter interacted outside the scope of your assigned projects? Have you had any meetings not documented through official scheduling tools? Can you describe the nature of your relationship outside work hours? Jake danced around them. So did Sophie. They weren't stupid. They'd clearly prepped. Every answer was vague, technically defensible, emotionally empty. Then Sarah read the Slack message aloud. Jake blinked. It was a joke, he said. We were joking about a different HR thing. Sophie nodded too quickly. We were joking. It wasn't about anything serious. Silence followed. I didn't speak. I wasn't allowed to, but I didn't need to. Jake knew I'd seen everything, and I knew he was lying. The meeting ended with a formal notice of temporary suspension for both of them, pending further review. Policy required it. It wasn't punishment, yet, just procedure. Jake didn't look at me once as he left the room. And that's when it hit me. Not like a crash, but like a quiet realization. I wasn't heartbroken, not yet. I wasn't even angry. I was just done pretending. Jake didn't come home the night of the meeting. He texted around 9 p.m. I need space, staying at a friend's. No explanation, no apology. Just space. I sat in our kitchen for hours after that. I didn't cry. There was nothing left to cry about. There's a strange clarity that comes when denial finally dies. I wasn't chasing proof anymore. I had it. I wasn't hoping for an explanation. I'd already heard enough. When Jake returned the next day, we didn't speak at first. He walked in, left his bag by the door, and sat across from me like a man awaiting sentencing. The silence between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I know, I said. He nodded. I don't want to hear excuses, I added. Still, he tried. It didn't start that way, he said, eyes fixed on a spot on the wall. It was just talking at first. She listened. You were always busy. I didn't mean for it to go there. The words were nothing new. I'd heard variations of them in HR exit interviews, post-affair apologies, broken workplace dynamics. The same recycled reasoning. I felt alone. It just happened. You were distant. It hits different when it's your husband saying them. I asked one question. Did it go beyond talking? Jake hesitated. Yes, he said finally. A few times. It stopped a while ago. A while ago, I didn't ask for dates. I didn't need a timeline. I wasn't here to verify his story anymore. What struck me most was how calm I felt. Not numb, not cold, just still. I stood up, walked to our bedroom, and took off my wedding ring. I placed it on the nightstand, not for drama, not as a threat. Just because I didn't want it on my hand anymore. We didn't talk much after that. Jake stayed in the guest room. I went to work. The investigation proceeded without me. HR policies kicked in. Sophie, as expected, resigned before any formal action could be taken. Jake was given the option to transfer or leave. He chose to leave. And just when I thought the dust had settled, something else arrived. A few weeks after Sophie's resignation, one of our junior HR staff forwarded me a document by mistake. It was meant for Sarah, but the system auto-filled my name. It was a standard exit package checklist, nothing sensitive, except for one attachment, a maternity leave form. Sophie had applied for early leave due to pregnancy. Her expected due date was listed as mid-February. I froze. I did the math. The affair started in spring. The Slack messages were in late summer. That timeline. It wasn't a coincidence. In the section for father's name, she had written N.A. That alone wasn't telling. But the whispers started soon after. People talk. They connect dots. And in a company like ours, even unofficial truths move fast. Jake never said a word about it. He didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it. But one night, as I sat reading on the couch, he walked in, pale, eyes sunken. She's pregnant, he said quietly. I looked up. Is it yours? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I nodded, not in shock, not in rage, just acknowledgement. Jake sat down across from me. I don't want anything to do with it. I never planned. I held up a hand. Don't. I'm sorry, Em. Number, you don't get to say that. He stopped. I filed for divorce today, I said. You'll get the papers soon. Jake looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe beg, maybe defend, maybe cry. But whatever it was, it died before it left his mouth. He simply stood, walked to the guest room, and shut the door. That was the last real conversation we ever had. A week later, he moved out. Left his keys, half his clothes, and a note that just said, I'm sorry for ruining everything. I didn't keep it. Sophie never reached out. I don't know if she kept the baby. I didn't care to find out. People asked questions, of course. Some coworkers guessed the truth. Others only knew fragments. I didn't correct them. I didn't defend him. I didn't explain myself. I just kept going. In the weeks that followed, I learned something strange about heartbreak. It doesn't always come in waves. Sometimes it's quiet, unremarkable. It seeps into your life like fog. You don't drown. You just wake up one day and realize you've been breathing in something cold for too long. I didn't cry when Jake left. Not when I saw the divorce papers with both our names on them. Not when I changed my emergency contact at work. Not even when I walked past the empty guest room and realized he'd taken the coffee mug we bought on our honeymoon. Grief for me didn't come with tears. It came with silence, and then slowly, movement. I took a 2-week leave from work, not for emotional breakdown, but because I needed space to think. I stayed off social media, avoided the office group chats, ignored the whispers I knew were swirling in the background. I wasn't ashamed. I just didn't want to perform recovery for anyone else's comfort. During those 2 weeks, I deleted old photos from my phone. Not out of spite, just clarity. I started running again, something I hadn't done since our 2nd year of marriage. I repainted the hallway. I changed the bed sheets. I bought new silverware. Small things, mundane, but they helped. When I returned to the office, people looked at me differently, not with pity, but with curiosity. Maybe even respect. I wasn't Jake's wife anymore. I was just Emily, the HR manager who handled the most difficult case of her life with professionalism and restraint. Ironically, that incident led to a much-needed policy overhaul. With the support of our legal team, I rewrote our entire workplace relationship policy, made it clearer, stricter, more protective for everyone involved. Not out of bitterness, out of necessity. Because now I knew what a blurred line could cost. Jake never came back to the company. I don't know where he went. I never looked him up. I blocked his number, not out of hatred, but because I needed a clean cut. I didn't want updates. I didn't want closure. I had already closed that chapter myself. As for Sophie, she disappeared too. She moved, I think. Maybe had the baby, maybe not. I don't wish her well, but I don't wish her harm either. She made her choices. So did he. And me? I survived. Actually, more than that, I healed. I no longer walk into rooms wondering if people are talking about me. I no longer feel the weight of betrayal when I hear someone laugh like Sophie. I no longer flinch when I see a Slack message pop up after hours. What I do feel is peace. And that peace didn't come from revenge or confrontation or dramatic closure. It came from choosing myself. Again and again, quietly, steadily. If you're listening to this because you're in the middle of something messy, something unclear, something that keeps you up at night, I hope this lands gently. You are allowed to know. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to stop pretending. Trust doesn't mean ignoring your instincts. Loyalty doesn't mean losing yourself. Love shouldn't leave you guessing. And if you find yourself in a position like mine, where you're expected to be the professional, the strong one, the one who keeps it all together, just remember, you can be all of that and still walk away. I did, and I promise you, there's life after the silence.